When tyrants take over, what's the first thing they do? Disarm. It happened in Russia, China, Germany, and most recently, Afghanistan. Why? Because disarmed people are easier to control. And over the last century and a half, American tyrants have been carrying out a slow, methodical disarmament that no one is talking about. State education. Tyrants know that education is warfare. Our rulers have a vested interest in making you totally harmless. They've got big plans and they don't want you getting in the way. Think about it. Would you rather fight an army decked out with high-powered rifles or a bunch of dinky water pistols? They know that if you can think critically, you're a threat. At New St. Andrews College, we want to graduate men and women who are dangerous. Dangerous to the world, dangerous to the principalities and powers, dangerous to spiritual wickedness in high places. Education can either arm you or disarm you. It can make you a threat or make you a useful idiot. So, where you get that education counts. Click the link to apply to New St. Andrews College today.
You can start the show now.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I always wait for you.
I'm ready for you to start the
Thank
show
you.
now.
That's why I hit the button, because you said hit the button. And I do what Gabe says to do.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, me, and Pastor Doug back in the studio.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting show.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Always
Yeah.
interesting. Backwards planning financial. Are you thinking differently about your family's finances and resources while others worry about surviving to the next paycheck? The hand of the diligent will rule while the slothful will be put to forced labor. That's from Proverbs. Train your mindset to see where God is moving, where to invest, where to build, so you can create, protect, and pass on wealth. What is your plan to use your economic power? Joe Garisi with Backwards Planning Financial coaches his clients. I probably mispronounced your name, Joe. I'm sorry. Coaches his clients to make this kind of impact on their world for generations by integrating investments, debt, insurance, tax-efficient strategies, and legacy planning. So go to Backwards Planning Financial. That's backwardsplanningfinancial.nm.com. Backwardsplanningfinancial.nm.com and connect with Joe.
I love
This guy. This guy's out of Florida. Good brother.
I want to talk to Joe.
I need to talk to Joe.
I'm just saying.
I just want.
We're really grateful to have with us Pastor Doug Wilson, as always. But there is something new. Y'all, if you don't know who he is, what's wrong with you people? DougWills.com is the website to go to. There's, and the full bio and all the things he's started and all the books he's written. But I don't know if you've updated your bio yet, but you are a great-grandfather now.
That's right.
I do need to update that. Yes, I'm a great-grandfather now.
So, I mean,
Wow.
I think
Not just a pretty good grandfather.
No.
Great
really great one.
grandfather.
I just think that's that's like that needs to be at the top of your bio now.
Wow.
Yeah, great grandfather. Pastor of Christ Church, involved with Canon Press and Canon Plus, and
You baptized your great grandbaby.
I did.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's
And
great.
you know what?
Incredible.
It was like
As a pastor.
I was
As a
watching the
pastor.
whole thing, and it was like nothing was going on. I would have been like, "All right, y'all, listen. Let me tell y'all what we're doing today. My great grandbaby." And it was just like,
Isn't she cute?
and it was just like, all right, and we're just moving right along. It was like, okay,
just regular
just
stuff.
regular,
Regular stuff.
Yep.
So thanks for coming back on,
Yeah.
as always. There's always something.
Always something.
Always something. And the latest something was you recently posted on your blog, and you also sent out a letter to the church community here that Christ Church has hired a defamation law firm,
Right.
Claire Locke.
Claire Locke. Right.
And so that's kind of making its rounds now. People are, there's some noise and so on. And I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, Christ Church, you, me, all of us, have been.
It's Doug's fault, though.
He's
All
fine taking
traced
it.
back to me.
Yeah. We've all been slandered for years. I mean,
Right.
there's been hate sites and websites and slander and mudflinging, for years.
Mm-hmm.
Why hire Claire Locke now?
So Claire Locke is not only a defamation law firm, but it is one of the top, if not the top, defamation law firm in the country.
Yeah.
So it's a respectable outfit. They know what they're doing. They're very, very competent.
Yeah.
So
Sounds pricey.
yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
You should know if you've listened to the Slanders that I own this part of the country.
Yeah.
I've had to tell people that I own downtown. I own precisely my pickup truck and the books in my office. That's what I own downtown.
Right.
But so they're very well respected, highly respected law firm. So we're not just saber rattling with a local attorney sent a letter or something like that.
Right.
So there's that. Your question is why now? You're right that there have been various randos and people accusing us of various things
For like 25, 30 years.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. In the recent past, last couple of years, the bad guys have been gearing up in a more serious way. There was the Vice article.
Okay.
Then the author of the Vice article wrote a book, Disobedient Women, and we have some chapters devoted to us in there.
Okay.
And then there was a recent Slate article. So if the question is why did we go to the next level? Well, the slanderers went to the next level.
Okay.
So basically, we've been all about proportionate response from the beginning. For most of this stuff, proportionate response means no response.
Right.
The dogs bark, but the train keeps going. Right.
Right.
All right. So that has been our stance for a long time. And then when it gets noticeable at a certain level, you respond. So when years ago, when the American Conservative under Rod Dreher picked up one of the local scandals and he publicized it, then
You responded.
I responded in like manner, and the American Conservative let me respond there.
Yeah.
So basically, we believe in commensurate response.
Okay.
We don't want to dignify slanders that are just out to lunch and the guy is just, some guy in the subway yelling at people.
Right.
We don't want to dignify that with all sorts of response. But the haters and the slanderers have been seeking to get organized, and it looks to us as though they're queuing up to be a little bit more serious. And so we just want to be commensurate in our response.
So they've been lying about us. They've been, for lack of better words, persecuting us. Shouldn't we turn the other cheek?
Oh, when it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'm going to point out here, this is a good place to point out, that I'm going to be unusually coy in this interview because I'm not going to talk about any of the cases or any of
Details
the things.
and stuff.
I'm not going to talk about any of that. But I can talk about the big picture, the big picture stuff, and talk about the scriptures. The Apostle Paul certainly knew how to just take, he's dragged out of the city and stoned, and he knew how to get up and go on to the next city. He did that.
Right.
But he also knew how to use the system when it was appropriate.
Appealing to Caesar.
So he appealed to Caesar. He uses the fact that he's a Roman citizen.
Right.
He does that in Philippi, and he does that in Jerusalem. And in Philippi, he sort of goes to the wall. They were beaten and locked up in prison. Yep. There's an earthquake. He leads the jailer and his whole household to the Lord.
Right.
Then the magistrates in the morning say, let those guys go. And Paul says, nothing doing. I'm staying here in prison because they did this to Roman citizens without
a trial or whatever.
Without reading us our rights, basically. Without we have certain rights as Roman citizen. As he was a Roman citizen, perhaps Silas was too. And he stayed there until the magistrates came down and escorted him out, and they were far more polite than they had been the previous day because they knew that they had overstepped. Mm-hmm. Right, so the Apostle Paul is not contradicting himself. It's like this whole topic is like a game of golf. You play the ball as it lays. Mm-hmm. Right? Depending on certain circumstances, you do one thing. If the circumstances are different, you do another. Right. So if I were handing out tracts on the street corner, witnessing to people, and somebody came up and punched me, I have no business throwing the tracts to the sidewalk and mixing it up with him.
Squaring up.
Because he's attacking me because I'm a Christian, because I'm sharing the gospel.
Right.
That's a situation where you turn the other cheek, just the way Jesus instructed.
Yeah. Right.
But there are other circumstances where you are permitted and encouraged by the example of Scripture to respond. So when Paul is on trial before the Sanhedrin, and someone orders it, he answered the high priest, and someone orders him to be struck. The high priest orders him to be struck. And then Paul says, God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. You're sitting in judgment on me according to the law, and in violation of the law, you order me to be struck. And then someone says, you talk that way to the high priest. This is an indication that Paul's affliction, his thorn in the flesh, was his eyesight.
Okay.
Couldn't
see who was talking.
He didn't see who the spokesman who was speaking there. And he says in Galatians that they would have given their very eyes, they would taken their eyes out and given them to him because they loved him so much. And in one place he says, "See with what a large hand I signed this letter." And so I take it that Paul's affliction was eyesight, but he says he challenges the high priest, and then someone rebukes him, and he says, I didn't know he's the high priest because you should not speak ill of a ruler of your people. But that tells you that Paul's response was appropriate for somebody, right? And then he walks it back, apologizes
because it's a person in authority,
because it was it was the chair of the meeting.
Yeah,
but it wasn't wrong for Paul to speak that way in the meeting. It was wrong for him to speak that way to the ruler of his people.
Yeah.
So you see basically throughout Scripture a willingness of God's people to be martyred. Stephen doesn't exhaust his appeal. Stephen is just hauled out of the city and killed.
Right.
But in other situations, the believers use the mechanisms that were available to them in the law.
Right.
Paul gives his defense before Felix. Paul gives his defense before Festus. So there's no problem at all using the civil courts to do what the civil courts do.
Right. So one of the other obvious questions and I've seen it raised on Twitter and elsewhere is, so now it's okay to take people to court. Now it's okay to take
before pagan courts.
Between pagans.
Yeah.
So, 1 Corinthians 6, dare any of you having a matter against another go to law before the unjust, not before the saints. Do you not know the saints will judge the world? And if the world shall be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? Know you not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life, etc.
Yeah.
How does and our community holds this actually quite strongly.
Yes.
And we teach this to our folks. So how does hiring a law firm like Claire Locke in this situation comport with this?
Right. So the first thing to do, and without getting into details, I'll just assure everyone that we have no intention of violating 1 Corinthians 6.
Right.
It's not like other people have to obey 1 Corinthians 6 when we're upset with them, but then we give ourselves a pass.
Right.
That's not what's going on here. But a lot of people misunderstand 1 Corinthians 6 in the first place. So, for example, Paul is not prohibiting the use of civil courts. He's saying two believers in the same church who have a business deal that goes south, let's say, that they team up to partner to do something, something goes wrong, and they don't remember the contract, or there wasn't a contract, or they don't remember it the same way, and they are in a dispute. Paul's indignation is leveled at them for taking that dispute before unbelievers. Right. The issue is two believers in a dispute going before unbelievers, asking the unbelievers to tell the two believers what justice is. Mm-hmm. And Paul is saying we have no business asking the unbelievers to come into the church and settle a dispute between two believers. But let's say it's the year is 1680 and you're in England. Right. And the church, the country is a Christian country. The common law is Christian common law.
Right.
The judge is a Christian.
What a day.
Maybe an elder in your church even.
Yeah. The judge is a Christian and an elder in your church. And two believers get crossways. There's absolutely nothing wrong with two believers going into civil court. The issue is before unbelievers. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what Paul emphasizes there. Yeah. So I would, if two believers were in a dispute, you'd want them to work it out privately if possible, and they might ask for pastoral help doing it. But the church should adjudicate business disputes rather than have it go before unbelievers.
Right. Rather be defrauded than get justice too.
Yeah, and you should drop it and just eat it. If someone, let's say a fellow evangelical Christian in your town doesn't believe any of that and wants to take you to court, you should rather be defrauded than to let that happen.
Right.
Okay. But like all of these things, there are a number of other factors. So there's a difference between criminal law and civil law. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between a criminal complaint, a tort complaint, and a business dispute. Mm-hmm. Civil, those are differences in the law.
Right.
So if you see someone stealing your car and you're about to call the cops, and then someone says, "Wait, I think that was Schwartz."
1 Corinthians 6.
I think that was Schwartz. I recognized him from church. Stealing your car. You're not prohibited from calling the cops.
Right.
Because the guy who stole your car might have been a believer.
It's a crime.
It's a crime,
right.
And that's not what Paul's talking about. That's not what Paul's talking about. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you want to make sure that you understand what the intention is, and you have to accept 1 Corinthians 6 as it is written, with teeth and all,
right. Mm-hmm.
Is such up to the point where you're willing to be defrauded, rather than asking unbelievers to help believers sort out what justice is. But let's say you have here's another way of people being fastidious. Let's say years ago, this was actually happened where my father knew of a situation where a little kid ran through someone's plate glass door and got cut.
Yeah.
And the family who owned the house were begging the family who had been injured to please file an insurance claim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that our insurance can cover it.
Yeah.
And the family of the child who was hurt wouldn't file an insurance claim because that would land you in.
They thought that was like going before unbelievers.
That was like going before unbelievers.
Right.
Or another common problem, and this is something where you do everything you can to stay out of civil court. But when, let's say your husband just ditches you,
right,
and runs off with some Twinkie and goes and joins a big box evangelical church down the road,
right,
and no
church
and
discipline,
no discipline happens and that sort of thing, and then he files for divorce.
Right.
Are you allowed? Well, that's a civil
right.
court. Right. Are you allowed to be?
Yeah.
Are you
defend yourself? Who gets what?
Yeah. So you do everything you can to stay out of court under those circumstances. However, if you have, let's say, an out-and-out pagan rips you off in a business deal, he's an out-and-out pagan. Mm-hmm. You're he worships Thor, right? And you worship the Father of Jesus Christ,
right? And
there's $100,000 deal that he reneged on. He sold you a house that, whatever. Is it a sin for a Christian to go to court over that? No, it's not a sin at all. It might not be a wise use of resources. You might want to realize that, okay,
the cost.
You want to count the cost and but it's not. There'd be no sin at all with a Christian being in court with a non-Christian.
Yeah, and that is just a form of theft there. I mean, like he that kind of sold you something that was completely shoddy, or a house that fell down the next day or whatever. It's like he stole that from you.
He stole it, but it's still a complaint that would be registered in the civil sphere.
Yeah, right.
But he's a non-believer and you're a believer. So the thing I would urge people to do is go through 1 Corinthians 6 and look at carefully what it's saying, and recognize that a lot of Christians will just blithely set it aside. And then, he sits on the other side of the church, same sanctuary as me. Right. We're at odds, and I'm going to ask Joe Pagan, the judge,
Right.
to come in and decide who owes who $500.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Pastor, I got two questions here. One of them I ask you to speculate on. The other one, I'll ask that one probably in a second here. But the first question is, what you said that our haters are leveling up. What do you think? Your speculation here. What do you think they're leveling up for? And after all these years, when I got here, the first thing I got, almost like my first interaction with this was I tweeted something from you on Twitter. And boy, did I get the boatload of mail coming about Moscow. I was still in Georgia. I hadn't even moved up here yet. And it was amazing because I wouldn't have read all those books had they not sent me. I was like, oh, these are the problems I've been seeing and haven't been able to verbalize. Well, thank you guys. So they helped me get a better understanding of where you're coming from and to share your worldview. But like we said earlier, we always had this, but why level up now? What's at stake now that's different than before?
So I would argue the big thing, and this is going to sound to some, and to especially the haters, like some form of self-flattery, but it's not flattering at all to recognize what's actually going on. Over the last 3 years, I would say, because of the crisis that our country has been plunged into. COVID, the lockdowns, the masking, the
voting,
the vaccines, the elections, just all of that. We're in a period of turmoil. And we're in a period of turmoil in which many respected evangelical Reformed leaders flaked. Right? They either went AWOL or they compromised, or the state said, your services are not essential. And then the Christian leader said, I guess you're right. They're not essential. Right? The abortion clinic is, the pot shop is, but we're not essential. And a lot of Christians who were previously okay with things were okay, and they're just going along, and they got fed kind of out of the sermons and whatnot. There was a huge wake-up call for a lot of Christians. The last 3 years has been. And so consequently, they have been willing to revisit a lot of their assumptions, and a lot of those assumptions had to do with why they were ignoring us all those years. So we've been talking about these things for decades. We've been talking about, as Francis Schaeffer taught, if there is no absolute above the state, if the state's here and the absolute is here, if there is no absolute above the state is absolute.
That's right.
And that is starkly, frighteningly true. And we are seeing that we are currently being ruled by people who recognize no authority above them. And all of a sudden, a lot of regular Christians, you might say middle-of-the-road Christians, evangelical Christians, have they're not woke, but they are awake. They're not woke, but they're awake. And what happened then is they started paying a lot more attention to us. It was a big promotion for us. Okay, and there were a number of factors that went into it. Gabe's arrest was one of the things that went into it, and the stuff that we were putting out during COVID, and it was like a reassuring voice. There were a lot of people all over the country who were saying, "Oh, there's some Christian leaders who have not lost their minds." Right. And so consequently, they're paying a lot of attention. Well, I believe that the brand of Kuyperian post-mill Calvinism that we are putting out in our distillery here is really good stuff. And a lot of people are paying attention to it. And there are a lot of other people who don't want them to pay attention to it. And so what they're doing is they're going back into their arsenal and hauling out every dead cat they can find. So they're throwing old boots at us and dead cats and ripened vegetables and rotten eggs, and they're doing all this. They're not sound on the Trinity. They deny sola fide. They harbor sexual.
What's wrong with you people?
Everything that they can think of, they're throwing. And I would say, and Jesus teaches very explicitly, when everybody thinks you're doing great, beware when all men speak well of you, he says. And he also says, when they slander you and despitefully use you and say every manner of evil thing about you, he says, in that day, rejoice and be exceedingly glad.
Right.
So I would argue that this flurry of recent activity attacking us is the result of God's grace to us in giving us access to the microphone. So the microphone includes the Cross Politic microphone, the Canon Plus microphone, the Christ Kirk website microphone,
Your blog,
my blog, all of those things. We have a nest of microphones here that God is prospering, and He's pouring out His blessing, and we don't take any credit for it. What do you have that you did not receive as a gift?
Right.
If it's a gift, then why talk as though you did it, right? God is prospering us, and there are many, many people who do not want that to continue to be the case.
Can I? You have another question?
Yeah, no,
I'm
I
sorry.
have two more now. No, but
I've got one, but you can go.
There is I don't know which one to pick from. Okay. Part of me wants to know, in your assessment and the elders, and as you guys are thinking about this, what's at stake if you don't do this?
One of the things, this is something I can say, it's just repeating what I said in my announcement letter.
Yeah.
Because of the increased reach and blessing that God has given our ministry, there are a lot of people around the country in little startup churches, startup schools,
classical schools,
classical Christian schools.
Yeah.
And what happens is when anybody tells someone, we're starting a classical Christian school, we hope to start in the fall, and we belong to ACCS.
They get the packet.
They get the packet. They get
The packet they sent you.
This packet they sent me. Yeah.
They get the treatment.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to get the treatment. Logos School here has got 600 plus students, and our community here has roots that go deep. It's not like it leaves us entirely unaffected, but we can weather it. But if you're a startup school with 25 students, and you're thanking God for every one of those 25 students, and 3 of them go wobbly because their Aunt Millie sent them the link to a hate site. Okay, that makes a difference to those people. So as I said in our announcement letter, the golden rule applies. We can't just take all the goodness from this promotion that we've received without taking on the responsibility that it brings with it. We are responsible for people who get the treatment through their willingness to be associated with us.
Wow.
So this is how we love our neighbor.
Wow.
This is how we love our neighbor.
The Podunk School and classical school in Texas, or
Right.
the CREC startup. And
Speaking of small classical schools, you guys keep saying classical Christian school, and
It's
my
like, the ad
ad,
is perfect.
keeps.
and we do free classical Christian school ads.
So
this is where it's coming from.
this is an ad for Kenai Classical Christian Classical School in Alaska, Kenai, Alaska. C.S. Lewis once said, "Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at its testing point." This resonates deeply with Kenai Classical, a pioneering classical Christian school on Alaska's remote Kenai Peninsula. That's awesome.
It's like a resort. Probably not, though.
Being
Alaska, bro.
It's the first ACCS school in the state.
Wow.
Wow. Kenai Classical has been shaping courageous Christ followers since 2019. Kenai Classical's current space, designed for 49 students, cannot accommodate the growing body of eager learners. This is where your generosity can become crucial. Kenai Classical needs to raise $1.7 million for the renovation of an old warehouse building, generously gifted to them as a future home. In a state with limited access to classical Christian education, this endeavor is monumental, but with faith in God's grace and the support of fellow believers, Kenai Classical can continue this pioneering mission. And so they're humbly inviting you to join them in this transformative journey. Find out more and make a donation at kenaiclassical.org/give. That's www.kenaiclassical.org/give. Kenai Classical. Check it out. That's awesome.
I kind of want to go over to Iowa caucus, but
I got a couple more questions. I got one question.
I know I got
before-
3 more.
yeah,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Gabe.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, go.
Okay, Gabe.
Just to kind of push a little farther on the whole 1 Corinthians 6 thing. So we've been lied about. We've been slandered for years. Now we're kind of getting a little more on the offensive. But this could potentially result in us taking. It's more than a church fight, but it includes a kind of church fight because Christians are involved in slandering us too, but also like Slate and but that mix, we could potentially go before a pagan court, and still not violate 1 Corinthians 6.
Yeah, this is one of those areas where I'm going to be coy.
Okay.
I'm going to say, man, David was asking good questions.
Message.
I just want y'all to know I got Doug to be coy.
That's scary.
Yeah. I want to ask a follow-on to what we've been talking about, same topic, but I think maybe another angle on this is that Christians often feel a certain nervousness about defending their name or their reputation.
Right.
And I think there's a good reason for that, because I think we instinctively know I'm supposed to be humble.
Well, doesn't the Bible lean that direction too?
Well, I guess I'm not sure, because I look at Proverbs and it says a good name is to be valued more than gold and silver. Obviously, we're not to be puffed up. We're not to think more highly of ourselves than we ought. Again, when you're persecuted, when you're slandered, when you're lied about, rejoice and be glad. Right. But at the same time, rumors went around about the Apostle Paul.
Right. Paul is the best example.
Yeah, and he defended himself.
And the way I parse this is when Paul is attacked for having a weak voice, let's say, his bodily presence is weak.
Yeah.
He says, "Okay, I'll take that."
Okay.
He doesn't get upset over anything personal toward him
or petty.
Right. But there are multiple instances where the attack on him is the avenue through which they are attacking the work of God.
Right.
They're attacking the ministry, they're attacking the work that is being done, and he is the point of attack. So when he's attacked for how often he went to Jerusalem after his conversion.
Right.
Okay. Well, the point of that attack was to make it look like he got his gospel at second hand.
Right.
Right. That was the point. So he's not a real apostle.
Right.
He's not a first tier apostle. You don't have to listen to him. And when that critique happens, he pulls out the boarding passes. He in Galatians, he just lays out, I went here.
Right.
3 years later, this is what
and they didn't add anything to me.
Yeah.
They gave me the right hand of fellowship, but I didn't get anything new from them.
Right. He lays out his itinerary and defends himself.
Right.
Precisely because he's not defending himself.
Right.
So there was a great moment in Whitfield's life where someone talked about how the Wesleys were making a name for themselves, and Whitfield said, "Let the name of Whitfield perish."
Right.
Okay. If people are attacking Doug Wilson because they don't like my sense of humor, or they don't like, don't like the shape of my don't like the shape of my head.
Oh, okay.
So let's say something like that. I should just roll with it. That's not a big deal.
Right.
But I know that when I know for good reason that the target is the ministry, the target is the flock that I'm a shepherd for.
Right.
Okay. The shepherd has to know when it's a cloud passing over the flock.
Right.
That scared the flock, but it's just a cloud.
Right.
And when it's a wolf, the shepherd has to know. One of the key qualifications for a shepherd, he has to know when to fight, when to move, when to reassure. No, this is not a big deal.
Right. Yeah, I always think of 2 Corinthians. I think of all the letters of Paul. He does it in Galatians, but 2 Corinthians in particular, he's defending his ministry in Corinth. And there have been a bunch of folks that have come in and said, Paul only, Paul is not one of the original apostles. He doesn't have the right paperwork.
Yeah,
he only shows up to ask you for money.
Right.
And then Paul proceeds in 2 Corinthians to say, look, I don't need paperwork. You are my paperwork.
Right.
God's changed your lives. That's proof that I have a real gospel ministry. And then says, and I'm not sorry for the last letter I wrote you. I know it was strong, but it did what it needed to do. It created the kind of repentance that needed to happen. And how about that offering?
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
And he says, it's not because I want the money, but I want you.
Yeah.
And I can't know that I have you unless I go ahead and follow through with asking for the very thing I had asked you for before.
And so we want to be Bible people. And so we want to not care about our reputation where the Bible requires us to not care about our reputation.
Right.
And we want to go to the wall over reputation where the Bible gives us an example.
That's helpful.
Pastor, I got to ask you, I've been here 9 years now, and I think about 4 years in, right as the social justice movement started to really kind of pick up, you were just still doing your thing in your groove, like nothing had changed. And I started to realize, like, oh, he knows what's coming. And then the whole sexual revolution thing started really taking off, transgender stuff. And I started realizing that you were doing history conferences back in the early 90s on these topics and trying to. And so you saw the thing with slavery is going to be a point of leverage in the evangelical community to get us to move.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you were already hitting on these things. And so I'm sitting here thinking and listening to you, and I'm saying, have we come to a whole new moment now in evangelicalism and what we're dealing with in the secular America, where we're having to reposition for the fight a little bit?
Yes.
And so I guess I'm asking to say, like, maybe other Christians might want to pay attention as well. Like, if you're going to engage this world, they're going to lie about you. They're going to come after you, and you better make sure you have something in your bag to deal with those things.
That's right. So you can't stop them from slandering you, but you can do something to give you something to say when they do. Right? So there are a lot of Christians, people say, well, you get accused of white supremacy because of what you wrote about the Civil War. I say, yeah, but all these other people that I know who didn't write a thing about the Civil War,
they're white supremacists.
They're white supremacists.
I'm a white supremacist. I'm the new face.
We just yesterday, we celebrated the Martin Luther King Day, who is the king of the white supremacists.
Oh,
because the doctrine that you should be judged by the content of your character and not by the color of your skin, that in a nutshell is white supremacy. I don't think
it is
now.
Yeah,
that's what white supremacy is now.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's too soon to talk about renaming all those boulevards.
now see, that's going to be taken.
Well, no, we must rename them because they're named after a white supremacist.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on, people. What's wrong with you?
All right, Pastor.
Let's get to
real quick
Iowa.
before we got to go. But I know you got to run. Your take on the Iowa caucus last night?
Well, anybody who was surprised by the Iowa caucus is someone who has been living in a bubble and believing all the stuff that the left and the media have been trying to make us believe. Mm-hmm. And so the issue is, I don't think it's personal affection for Trump. I think a lot of people in the middle are saying, whatever those guys want us to do, we're going to do the opposite. Anybody who's trying to play the respectable middle, like I'm a responsible conservative, Nikki Haley would be an example. I'm an old guard kind of conservative. I'm a conservative out of the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. No, you're not. You can't tell us whether a man can become a woman.
That's right.
You're not out of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think if Ronald Reagan showed up again, a lot of people would say, "Oh, I really do like him." But if someone comes out invoking the name of Reagan, but is going along with all of the transgressive new policies or is soft on them, then people have just had it. I think that even with Trump's erratic, he's as erratic as ever.
Yep.
Like he's going to build the FBI, shiny new headquarters. As though that's what they need. If only they didn't have those dingy cubicles, they wouldn't have done all those mean things to me. So Trump is a wild card, always has been, and I think people know that. Right. But they know that whatever he is, transgressive, erratic, all of that, he is an outsider, and all the insiders hate him.
Right. And that's what they're voting for.
And I want someone in the White House that every respected person in Washington hates.
Yeah, right. I just want to point out really quickly, I see you about to take your
not
butt.
yet.
Oh, no,
not yet.
I
We
got
got like 5 minutes.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys can ask additional questions, but I thought you were going to close the show. But I just wanted to mention to people, if you're watching or listening and you say, okay, so what are all the slanders? What are all the controversies? I think it's worth pointing out, Doug, you have a controversy library
Yes.
on your website, as if you were prepared for this kind of conversation.
Yeah, it's been up there for years.
DougWills.com.
Right.
Doug, WILS.com. Click on Controversy Library.
It's on the top menu bar on the About.
Okay.
Okay. Then one of the drop down items is Controversy Library.
Yeah.
And basically 95% of the controversies
Right.
have detailed responses,
Right.
elder minutes, resources.
And that's one of the things I just think is worth underlining is like, so, one of the big accusations is that we are some kind of cult. Didn't you say one time we were accused of making our own toothbrushes or something?
I ain't seen no Kool-Aid yet.
Yeah. It was one of the weirdest ones. We were accused of making our own toothbrushes.
We got a lot of good bourbon, but
You
I ain't
got
seen
your
no
homemade
Kool-Aid.
toothbrush? Anyways, but sometimes it's the heading is cult.
Right.
And then under heading of cult, then it's like they don't know what the Trinity is. They don't believe in justification by faith alone. And they protect abusers or all the rest of it. And I think one of the biggest things that just like puts that to bed completely, out to pasture completely, is the fact that like you can ask Pastor Doug, you can ask me, you can ask any of the pastors or elders on staff any question you want anytime.
Right.
There's no big secrets.
Right.
All the way up until, unless we have to protect the privacy of individuals in our church, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's we've just answered.
Right. And it's public.
And it's public information. Like you said, elder minutes. I mean, what kind of cult shares the elder minutes with the world?
And one of the things we've done, as we've had so many immigrants moving to Moscow, we've had a lot of them. Mm-hmm. We've had to have periodic welcome aboard new member meetings,
updates.
And one aspect of the agenda of these meetings is, hey,
ask any question.
Ask any question you want. No doubt, before you moved here, your concerned aunt took you aside and said, "Do you know what you're doing? Because this and this."
Right.
No question is off limits.
Right.
What do you want? What do you want to hear?
Right. And we get routine phone calls and emails from honest folks around the country sometimes. Maybe thinking about moving here, or just what I heard. I saw something, and we take those. We take those questions. We're happy to answer them. But a whole bunch of them are there in the controversy library on your website, right there for everybody to find. It's very useful. There's recordings, there's audio files of interviews and so on. One of the most helpful ones that I'll just point to was an interview that Darren Doan did with you in the last couple of years.
Was that 6 hours long?
I think it's still
it's amazing.
And it's on YouTube. If you search All My Friends Are Heretics, Darren Doan, Douglas Wilson, there's 6 episodes or something like this, where Darren kind of does his thing and asks kind of all the most awkward and angular questions that are asked often.
Correct.
And you sit there on the couch and answer them.
He's a great devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But just a real helpful resource. And we got a lot of feedback after that one in particular. Same answers in many respects, but I think maybe the medium as being audio, video, but also just maybe the direct nature of those questions answered a lot. And we got a lot of feedback from people saying, thank you. That was really helpful.
Right.
And some neat behind the scenes reconciliations too from folks. Anyways, just wanted people to know about those resources. If you say, okay, what are all the controversies you're talking about? You can
There
look
they
at
are.
them. They can
Go
look
to
at them
Doug's
there.
blog. Last thing, you got anything to say about that?
No,
Okay.
that's a great.
Yeah.
You've only been coy once, by the way.
One time.
Just one time.
I used the word coy. I was being coy all the time.
I see.
It made me nervous to ask him another question.
That was the goal, Dave.
You should be.
Our conference next year, Prodigal America, prodigalamerica.com.
Which is named after a blog post that you wrote, by the way.
Yeah.
Does America want to return to the Father?
Yeah.
And it's October 31st, which is Reformation Day, through November 2nd in Fort Worth, Texas. You're one of our speakers next year, Steve Days, James White, who will maybe have you go right after. I'm sure that
George Grant
will be there.
Yeah.
If our subtitle for that conference is "Where Does America Need to Repent?" So without much giving you time to think about this, where would you maybe identify the heart of where America needs to repent?
There are a bunch of sins that every conservative evangelical Christian would list abortion and rampant pornography and the transgender thing and Obergefell. All those are all sins. The central root sin is our secularism, and it's a pernicious sin because it's the sin that we think is a virtue. So, and even many Christians think it's a virtue.
Neutrality.
David French.
They think that they think a neutral public square is even a possibility, and they think that they object to what the leftists are doing by bringing their agenda into this neutral public square. No, it was never neutral. Right. It was never neutral, and so we have to get clear on how heretical the idea of secularism is. The public square can be objective and not get into whether the Baptists or the Presbyterians are right. But it's not possible for a civil order to not get into whether the Hindus, Muslims, Christians, or Darwinists are right. You can't be neutral there.
Right.
You're gonna govern either with the understanding that the citizens are made in the image of God, or you're not going to govern them. They're either going to be bits of protoplasm that you can shovel around the plantation as you please, or they're going to be created in the image of God, whose rights and dignity must be respected. That's not that you can't split the difference on that.
Right. You can't have these rights that are derived from a creator.
Right.
According to our founding
as our founding document says.
That by itself is not a neutral
correct
statement. That's
an evidence of white supremacy, actually.
Pastor Wilson, thank you so much for coming with us. Appreciate it so much. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next time, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
It is the duty of the free man to resist tyranny at every turn. Every man will either watch his freedom stripped away or take action to protect what he loves. Introducing the A3, the newest revolutionary body armor from Armored Republic. The A3 is the new standard for lightweight multi-hit body armor. A3 plates are incredibly light at 4.6 pounds. The patented design captures fragmentation while remaining multi-hit capable. The A3 will stop up to M80 ball, yet comes in at only 0.7 inches thick. The A3 is the thinnest NIJ .06 compliant or certified composite standalone plate that includes the drop test. The A3 is the first of its kind, patent pending, that combines an alloy strike face with polyethylene backing, revolutionizing body armor technology by providing strength and durability while remaining sleek and maneuverable. The A3 is the new standard in lightweight body armor. The fight against tyranny just got stronger.